about 3 ways that your brand voice can transform your business. Welcome.
Right. Hi, folks. So we're going to start off by talking about fruit. We're going to do a quick bit of audience research. I want you to imagine you've walked to the breakfast bar in the hotel. You've got a choice of all the fruit juices. Put your hand up if you're picking apple. Okay, few. I've got a few. Orange. Who's going for orange? Some of you are very picky. Anyone going for banana? Wow, usually no one says that. I've got two freaks saying banana in the corner. So those are the normal results. Let me click on. These are fruit juice choices in the US. As you can see, we've got apple and orange at the beginning. All right, now this time I want you to imagine it's a fruit bowl. You've got the choice. Who's going for apple? Hand up. Who's going for orange? Hand up. Look, suddenly the orange people have switched allegiance. Anyone going for banana? Suddenly we've got loads of people going for banana, which is weird because kind of when you have the juice choice, you go for the ones that taste nice, basically, right? Apples, oranges, bananas, basically not that nice. But fruit bowl, you've got a choice. Loads of people go for the banana. Why? Is anyone going to shout at me? It's easy, absolutely. The orange in a fruit bowl has a problem. And those of you who work in user experience ever will know this word, friction. There's a lot of friction in eating an orange, right? It's hard to peel, you get the juice all over yourself. Bananas are easy. Well, in a minute, we are going to talk about linguistic friction and why that might be something that your brand is suffering from. So, I'm Neil from Schwa. I'll tell you about me in a minute. But Rania, you should introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Rania Nasis. I'm the founder and CEO of Super Awesome Care, and we're building a virtual clinic for kids with food allergies and their families. I'm not going to ask, but if I ask for a show of hands, about 5 to 10% of you would either have a food allergy or a child with a food allergy. It's a growing problem in the United States, all across the world. And it's 6 million kids in the US. High anxiety condition because it can lead to fatal anaphylaxis. Really tough for parents to manage. Our healthcare system doesn't do a great job. It's really about education, coaching, and you can't cram that into a 15, 30-minute specialist visit in general. And that's why we exist. Parents are just frustrated, and we're bringing it to them with the best allergists, nutritionists, behavioral therapists, online from the comfort of their own home. And that's what we're about.
And Rania came to us for some help, more about which in a minute. So I'm from this company, Schwa. We've got the comfy chairs outside. It's fun to say. Just collectively, give me a Schwa. Beautiful. I feel a bit like a cult leader when that happens. It makes me satisfied. We focus on the language of brands and how that can shift people's behavior. Particularly, the stuff we did with Rania was around whatever you want to call this thing. Sometimes it gets called tone of voice, sometimes verbal identity, sometimes brand voice, whatever. How your brand's personality comes across in words. And hooray, we have clients. That's good, isn't it? So let's go back to the idea of linguistic friction. This is something that loads of businesses suffer from. And not just businesses, other organizations. Tons of friction. Right, that might be completely accurate. That might be what the law says about parking in this place. No one's going to read it. It's too much like hard work. Tons of friction. If you go to the printer in our office, sometimes you get this message. Right, which I think means you've put in the wrong password, but comes out in this language. And the person who wrote this is not trying to be difficult. They think this is really helpful because they're a deep expert in their particular specialism and they just can't help foisting that onto the rest of the world. But clearly it doesn't work for us because this is a line I love, stolen from a guy called Jakob Nielsen. He says the thing you need to remember about your audience, because it's true about every audience, is that they are lazy, selfish, and ruthless. And so stuff like this just isn't going to work for them. So we promised you 3 ways that brand voice might transform your business. Number 1 is it might just make it understandable. We have a big tech client who did some research with their big customers, and one of the things that came out is they said, we love you, we like working with you, we would buy a hell of a lot more from you if we knew what it was you were selling. Because they're so bad at explaining it, even to their own fans. And Rania, I guess, has a particularly difficult thing to explain.
Yeah, so one of the challenges we have in healthcare is we tend to over-explain things and we add a lot of jargon. And that makes it really difficult for patients not only to understand what's happening, but then also to explain it to everyone else that has to know. So for instance, with a child with food allergy, you have to explain it to your in-laws, your brothers, sisters, everybody that's connected, teachers. And if you really think about the best science communicators, what they do is really break it down as simple as possible so that using metaphors that we understand and words that we understand, leaving out the jargon. And with food allergy, there's a ton of jargon. It's an immune response, there's IgE, there's a cascade of symptoms that happen that lead to anaphylaxis, that leads to another cascade of symptoms. And the reality is you don't need to know all that to take care of your child with food allergy. And so one of the things, and you can show the example of, we thought we did a decent job with this, of trying to take out the jargon, make it explainable, but we were still over-explaining it. Parents didn't need to know all this information about a particular therapy for food allergies. And really, with Schwa's help, they sort of gave us an example, and it was like, duh, this is all parents need to know. And this just goes back to, it's really simple to understand. They get the gist of it. We're not over-explaining and overwhelming them with big blocks of text that they have to read. It's really simple to understand and walk away. And for us, it's made us more effective communicators of what we're trying to get across.
So, I want to try a little experiment. I want to see if you can explain your brand. I want you to write down a little description of what your business does. You can do that on your phone, you can do it on a piece of paper, but I'm going to get you to do that in a very particular way. I'm hoping some of you might remember from school what a haiku is. I'm getting some nods of recognition, right? So a Japanese poem, super short, 3 lines, 17 syllables. Let me give you an example. This is stolen from a book called 100 Great Books in Haiku, where the author has taken loads of stories and novels and things and reduced them down to 3 lines. So here's a story I'm hoping you know, or maybe you've seen one of the films or something. Instead of that, in haiku, in 3 lines, you get this. A factory tour doesn't go to plan because children are awful. That's not in the Super Awesome Care tone of voice, by the way. So I'm going to give you a minute and a half. I want you to write down an explanation of what your business does in haiku form. And by the way, the numbers, that's syllables. You need 5 syllables in line 1, 7 syllables in line 2, 5 syllables in line 3. Syllables, not words. So children are awful is 3 words, but it's 5 syllables. Good luck. This lady, she can't take it. Look, she's leaving the room.
She didn't want homework.
Yeah, exactly. She's having childhood trauma coming back. And I can see some of you doing it. You might need to count on your fingers or the edge of the table. Obviously the good kids at school. This has gone very quiet and very well behaved. Love it. Okay, final few seconds. Okay, stop there. That's really unfair. That is not enough time to do that, really. But I'd love to hear from a couple of you. How was that? Fun, good. Why was it fun? Yeah, it's creative. Yeah, good. There's a nice line about the deepest secret of creativity being the welcoming of constraints, which I guess that's what this gives you. Anyone else? How'd you find it? Hello? Okay, good, good. Anyone absolutely hate it? Okay, no one's admitting to it. It's a pretty good discipline to get into, just to test yourself, to see whether you really can explain stuff simply. Maybe avoiding some of this language. I don't want to pick on any of my fellow speakers, but you'll have seen some of these words today, yesterday. Maybe you use some of them in your own decks and your own communications, and they're all fine. But is there a simpler way of saying something? Is there a more human way of saying something that might actually connect a bit more? So, first thing of three things is, could you make your brand more understandable? Next thing, could you make it remarkable? Because all your competitors are trying to make stuff understandable as well. Can you actually get your brand to stand out through the language that it uses? I'm going to show you the About Us page of a big accountancy firm. Luckily, I don't think they're here. Have a read. Anyone excited to read paragraph 2? So this is what they talk about. They help other organizations mitigate risks and grasp opportunities, positive, sustainable change. They've got 236,000 people. It's about purpose, of course it is. Let's look at one of their biggest competitors. Their purpose is building a better working world. They help clients capitalize on new opportunities and assess and manage risk. They've got 300,000 people. And they want to do this in a way that's sustainable and inclusive. Let's look at another one of their biggest competitors. They are uniquely placed to help clients reduce risk, seize opportunities, and become more sustainable, in quotes. I don't know why that's in quotes, because it's a lie. I've got no idea. They're saying exactly the same thing in exactly the same language as their biggest competitors, which is the opposite of a brand. We wouldn't tolerate that if it was happening in visual terms or in terms of the experience, which is why I think most brands have missed the power of language to set them apart. So let me show you another example before Rania tells you why that works for them. We work a bit with Comcast. I'm going to show you something from Comcast's UK subsidiary, Sky. If you have a problem with your set-top box, with your TV, you can go to their online help stuff, and it says things like this. Deleted items will be sent to the deleted section of your planner. If you change your mind, simply navigate to deleted, find the show, and select undelete. It's fine. I'm saying the word delete a lot, you might have noticed. One of the things about their brand voice that we help them with is, how do they sound like a fan? How do they sound like a fan of the shows that they put on? So we rewrote this, and this is, we're here talking about strategic marketing. The thing about being a fan is their big strategy. Now we're going down to the real detailed execution of it, right? So we changed that. You'll be able to tell when we rewrote this, the height of Game of Thrones, to say this. A delete doesn't last forever. Just ask Jon Snow. Tiny little moment as you're trying to fix your TV, but tells you something about their brand. So, tell us about standing out.
We kind of boxed ourselves into a little bit of a corner with our name. We can't really be super awesome care and be boring and stale. But we're competing against sort of the traditional healthcare system, which is a ton of words, a ton of jargon. And then also we're competing against nonprofits, which are fantastic and provide a lot of really great resources. But in order to fundraise, they have to make the problem seem as terrible as humanly possible. So they just freak the crap out of every parent. And then, because they're not getting the answers that they want, or they feel dismissed or unheard by their urologist, they're going to Facebook, which is a fantastic tool. Great for community building. But there's just so much misinformation on there. And if you go into the food allergy groups, it is reaction after reaction after reaction after reaction. It's just doom scrolling in every single one of them. And then 300 comments as to what other people that are not doctors and don't really know think this might be in your child. And there's some parents in there that are really great and actually know better than most pediatricians how to diagnose. But then you also get sort of crazy suggestions in there because their child, sometimes there's people in there whose children don't actually have food allergies. They have a sensitivity, which is very different. And so there's just so much misinformation. And so what we try to do to be remarkable is, one, speak to them in a way that they can understand with everyday language. Break things down simply, but also be a trusted voice so that we're talking in everyday language, but we come across as authoritative at the same time. And not just for parents. Our patients are the kids, but our parents are really the consumers. But also, we're a startup. We're pitching to investors. We're always fundraising if you're a startup. And so this also helps us stand out to investors because we are a direct-to-consumer company. It helps for us to say, hey, we actually know how to talk to consumers. Not like we're a hospital system and talking to patients, but in a way that they can relate to and they can engage with our brand. And in our deck, Neil showed all those fantastic words that typically are used in pitch decks. I don't think we use a single one of them. Our brand is just very relatable. We don't say, we're going to have strategic partnerships to deepen our technical relationships. We say partnerships supercharge our growth. We keep it really simple, and it helps us tell this really great story for investors. And I can't tell you how many comments we've gotten from investors of just how different our pitch is, our deck, how much thought we've put into how we communicate and connect with our audience.
Okay, almost the final thing. If you do that understandable and remarkable thing really consistently, it's memorable. It becomes something that people start to recognize as part of your brand. I was going to prove something to you with a memory test, but I've got 4 minutes left. So bad news, you'll never know what this meant. You're just going to have to speculate what any of that could mean. But good brands get into our heads, right? And they do it with language. That's how straplines work. How many thousands of times have you seen this? Of course that works. But other stuff works as well, been proven to work for our memories. So we work with a car leasing company. Again, a startup, but a kind of spin-off from a bigger business. They were trying to attract new customers. They were testing Google Ads, and they were testing all the stuff that you would imagine they would test. Actually, the thing we did for them that performed best was the line, Mini Cooper, super duper. That's how simple it rhymes. Click. And in fact, now their whole brand voice is built around rhymes, and that becoming the thing that you start to recognize. And yeah, we want these ideas to be memorable in the outside world, but it also helps if they're memorable internally as well.
Yeah, so our internal phrase that we say for our brand is spark trust. Does it spark trust? And it's the thing that I ask all the time of all pieces of content that we come out. And it's really a way of, I just have to ask the question, does it spark trust? And everyone that's seen our guide knows what I mean by it and knows if the language, there's too much jargon in it, if it's not clear enough, it's not precise enough. It also makes it easier because I don't have to pick apart and let's change this word, this word, this word. It's just like, make the spark trust. And it's just really great. We use it all the time internally through everything from our guides, the content we're putting out, our social media posts, of how do we talk to consumers, in the spark being that there's energy to it, that we're relatable, we're talking in everyday terms, but that we're also coming across as a trusted voice. So we're not going too far on the humor side and using like toilet humor instead of dad jokes, but at the same time coming across, they can trust us, but we're also relatable, and there's an excitement and an energy, because what we want to get across is that kids with food allergies are super awesome, and they can have super awesome care and super awesome lives and live a completely normal life despite the fact that they have a food allergy, which could, in very, very rare cases, kill them, but we're gonna help you manage it so that doesn't happen.
And Rania sent proof that she's using it internally. We love that kind of shorthand so that no one ever has to go away and then read a massive long brand deck, right? So I promise you 3 ways brand voice will transform your business. Here's the sneaky 4th one. It's actually pretty measurable, this stuff, in a way that you might not expect. So I showed you this rewrite before. This is a really measurable bit of writing from their online user guides. And what Comcast found is when they use this, they cut what they disgustingly call digital leakage by 3.53%. So that means people leaving the website and calling the call center, which they don't want. And 3.53% doesn't sound like much. Actually, that turns out to be 14,000 calls a year because they've got millions of customers. And they know exactly how much a call costs to handle. So that rewrite, well, the whole thing, saves them 100 grand. Which sadly is much more than they paid for their brand voice project. We should have been paying on results. And pretty much whatever is the thing that you are trying to improve in your business, usually we've had that brief and found a way to use language to tackle it. So, 4 things, actually. And the final thing that I say, and I know this is something that Rania has been thinking about as well, is some of the best brands have cottoned on to this stuff and even starting to hire for it. So you might know Monzo, Challenger Bank. If you want to go and work in customer service in Monzo, you do a writing test. Because they say our whole brand exists online, digitally. Our face is how we write. So, those are 4 things. Sorry we didn't have time for questions, but come and harass me and Rania in the corridor or over lunch. Or you might see some of our colleagues, you might see Miriam or Rose or Louise, go to our comfy chairs, go and have a chat with them. Thank you very much.